Hi, I'm Frolic in the Forest. Welcome to my channel where I talk about my Sylvanian families and calico critters collection as well as DIY projects and crafts. The Corntop rabbit family was one of two Sylvanian families I had as a child, and I always loved them. I only have the mother and the father left, and I found this little guy in a blind bag, and I thought he's really close to the coloration of the mom and dad, so I thought maybe I can make a little corntop baby to add to my little forest village collection. Today's the painting day, so let's get started. Now, first thing I need to do is to mark where the actual paint needs to go, and I just use a pencil and just carefully draw the shapes that I want to paint. For this project, I'm going to be using the gray and the white fabric paint. I think that should work, so I'm just going to mix those two colors together and use them to create the spots on our little baby rabbit. Now I'm comparing it to the original rabbit, and it seems quite a bit lighter, but this paint tends to dry darker. So it's going to be a little bit tricky to match the paint exactly, but I'm going to give it my best. Here's a little painting tip. If you are painting a section that has an edge like this, make sure the edge has plenty of paint along it, because the flocking sometimes separates and as it dries, and then you are left with a very irregular edge. So if you want a specific shape, just make sure you've got plenty of paint along that edge. You don't have to overdo it, but just make sure that it's not too light on that portion of the shape. Future me here, this is the point where I'm noticing that the gray is not the right shade of gray. It probably needs to be a lot warmer, which means adding some brown, but at this point, even if it's the wrong color, it would be better to go ahead and paint everything one color and then put the corrected color on top so that it'll be all consistent all the way across. It's like if you're going to make a mistake, be consistent with it. That's my philosophy. So that's kind of where I am right now in my head. going to take a little tiny break and show you the paintbrush I'm using. I'm just using an inexpensive acrylic brush, number 5, and you can use whatever brush you have, just whatever you feel comfortable size-wise in your project. Future me here. I'm noticing already that the more I paint, the worse it gets. But I'm trying to be optimistic and hoping that it'll still be cute and it'll be okay. Here's the brush I'm using in case you're curious. These are just inexpensive acrylic brushes I got at my local craft store. And whenever you're painting around an eye, it's almost impossible to prevent paint to get on the plastic eyeball itself, but don't panic when that happens. Just let it dry and then use the end of an X-Acto knife or a razor blade and just gently scrape off the dried paint, and it usually comes right off. Of course, I try not to get too much on, but when they're this tiny, it's really hard to avoid. If you're looking forward to watching me scrape the paint off the eyeball, I'm not going to do it on camera. It's pretty disturbing, so just trust me that it works, and we'll just leave it at that. Like I mentioned before, I'm getting back in there and saturating those edges to make sure that the shape is clear. You can really see right here where the flocking's pulling the paint so that the edge is kind of frayed looking. And so I have to go back and add a little bit more paint to that area. Here's future me again. This is also the first project where I've used the white fabric paint, and I'm already noticing that it's doing something a little different than the other paint colors I've done. And it's sort of laying on top of the flocking rather than getting into the flocking. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm already seeing that something is amiss. And I'm hoping at this point that when it dries, it'll, be okay. But, this project was sort of doomed from the beginning, unfortunately. Now that the first coat has dried, I realize that the gray is just too dark. It dried much darker than I expected, and you can see from the comparison to the mother. So I'm going to mix another gray and just add a lot more white, and I think that will fix the problem. Future me here, that did not in fact fix the problem. It made it worse. The white is not sitting correctly on the flocking, and it's just blobbing on top. And you can see here I'm already noticing that the white is just taking over. It's too much. Unfortunately, the more I add to the figure, the worse it gets. Okay, I think we can all see where this is going, and it's not going well. So I'm going to cut it off here in just a second, but I was just thinking that if I had known what was going to happen, I think what I would have done the first time the gray didn't really quite work is I should have just tried to rinse off as much as I could, have gotten the paint off, and very carefully, of course, I didn't want to smear it everywhere, and then let it all dry and then start over again, mixing a different color of gray. But I've not really had to mix a color to match another figure before. I usually just sort of do my own thing, and so it doesn't really matter. But this has taught me a lot of things, and one of them is cut your losses early before you really get yourself, before you dig your hole really deep like I'm digging right now. Okay, so our baby is dry, and I'm already frustrated because the gray did not lay very well on the flocking for some reason. It almost seems like the white came to the surface. I don't know what's going on. Maybe the paint's old. Anyway, and my paint color's wrong. I mean, if we look at the two colors, the original is much more taupey, which means it's browner. And I thought maybe the gray would be okay, but like it looks bad. I'm going to try and peel paint off the flocking. It's sitting really high on the flocking, so that might work. Well, I tried to peel the paint off the flocking and it took the flocking off. So I guess that's one way to deflock a critter, but he looks like he's been munched on. That's where we are. And so I've decided to aggressively paint the areas black. I decided not to try and mix the color of the corntop rabbit because I thought even if I got the color right, because of the damage that was done by this process, it would not look okay. The gray would just not hold up. But I thought maybe black could sort of hold its own against the damage that I did to the figure. So I'm going to paint him black, the parts that were going to be gray, and then I think he'll be okay. He'll just join his little cousins, and we'll make lemonade out of the lemons that I picked from the tree that I thought were apples. So this was definitely a fail in some ways, but hopefully when I finish painting these areas black, it may turn out to be a semi-fail instead of a complete fail. And here's how our little baby turned out. He's okay. It's not super obvious that the flocking is damaged. Of course, if you know or if you look closely, you can see a little bit of a difference there. But overall, I think he's okay. And let's add his cousins in, and then when you add everybody in, it's okay. Oops, I ran out of room. I'll just scooch you over there. So yeah, I think it's okay. I'm disappointed because I really wanted that baby corntop rabbit, and I just bungled the whole process. But I went ahead and filmed it and finished this so that maybe it will encourage you to try a custom, even if you're scared that you're going to do exactly what I did. But there is some redemption. Like there's a way to come back from it, even if it's really, really bad. So anyway, have a great day, and I will see you next time.